A lot of people are freaking out inside the government about what Elon Musk is up to, and it has now risen to the level of secret messages, audio recordings, and interviews with Hill reporters, so Capitol Hill reporters, who are covering these interviews privately, alleging that Elon Musk is committing crimes inside of the federal government and suggesting he could end up getting arrested. There's a professor at Georgetown that is going as far as saying there's so much illegal stuff going on that Elon appears to be playing the quantity game, assuming the system can't react to all of the legality at once because what he is doing is so, quote, wildly illegal. Whew. In this video, we've got to break down what's going on here because Musk says it's actually the Treasury officials that are breaking the law every hour of every day by approving payments that are fraudulent or don't match the funding laws passed by Congress. Other people argue, no, these are funds that are passed by Congress and you got to get your nose out of it. This is intense, and there are a whole host of laws and rules and acts that we got to talk about to understand what Elon Musk is up against here. And once we go through that, I'll give you my opinion on how this could all play out. So first, it's worth knowing that there's a Supreme Court case called Train versus City of New York. And in this case, President Nixon, allocated less money to the Environmental Protection Agency than Congress had actually designated. This ended up leaving the City of New York filing a class action in conjunction with other cities, and the Supreme Court ultimately ruled in this case in favor of the cities, that they deserved the money they were allocated by Congress. And from then on, and from this 1970s case on, we ended up getting a precedent where when Congress allocates money, you can't provide a deficiency in allocation. You must provide it. Mind you, this was a 1975 case, so it's been precedent for a while. A lot of people believe that this case is going to lead the Supreme Court to ultimately get involved and suggest that no, Elon, you can't just go around cutting spending at the Treasury or from any other department. Now, Donald Trump's team and Elon Musk have already sort of crafted a workaround to this. They don't argue that they're withholding any money. They're just, quote unquote, temporarily suspending payments while they review them to make sure that they're not fraudulent. And in doing so, they're trying to skirt this 1975 law. However, there are also federal spending laws, such as the 1974 Budget Act, which says the president himself cannot withhold or defer appropriated funds, which has some people arguing that there could actually be violations of the 1974 Budget Act. And because this is a law, a crime could potentially be enforced. Now, I don't actually think we're going to have a Department of Justice that's going to file a criminal case against Donald Trump. I mean, I think that's been tried a few times before. And given that Donald Trump is now president and technically immune, it ain't going to be Trump people are coming after him. This is why, again, people see Elon Musk as Donald Trump's Dmitry Medvedev. In case you don't remember that reference, Dmitry Medvedev was the appointed puppet. I shouldn't say appointed. He was elected, okay? He was the elected puppet to placehold Vladimir Putin while Vladimir Putin termed out. Well, then, of course, after Dmitry Medvedev had his term, all of the people of Mother Russia got to vote for Vladimir Putin again, and he came back. And this is essentially where people come up with this reference of, oh, okay, so Dmitry was just Putin's puppet, and Putin was there in the background the whole time. Yeah, probably. But now people are trying to say this is what's actually happening with Musk, that Musk is potentially the person without immunity who could be exposed to all of these laws because he's working within the government. Now, remember, DOGE was created to be outside of the government. So some people are saying, okay, well, he's outside the government. But then people come and say, well, if he's outside the government, then how come he is inside the Treasury Department and going through government documents? And now this is where the White House has recently said, well, he's actually an unpaid special employee, which is usually what happens with advisors. But the question is Elon Musk directing the cancellation of funding, especially since he's arguing that he's throwing USAID into the meat grinder or wanting to help shut down other agencies at his direction? Is his control, or is it Trump? Anyway, this opens up the can of worms. And it doesn't so much matter what we think, it matters what anybody who wants to file a lawsuit thinks. See, any agency or state government or local government that ends up getting their funding withheld could end up filing a lawsuit against Elon Musk and DOGE and the Trump administration, and they probably will. In fact, the CIA director just offered a federal buyout to all CIA workers. Now, this is the CIA director, so he's a Trump appointee, but a lot of folks are wondering, wait a minute, what happens if too many people take these buyout offers and we just don't have enough security officials anymore? You know, this is where other people respond and say it's okay. So far, only 20% have taken Trump's federal buyout offer. 20%. 20,000 workers have taken the buyout offer, which is actually closer to 1% rather than the number Donald Trump was hoping for, which would have been like 5 to 10%. But anyway, second law that could potentially be broken is the Anti-Deficiency Act and Appropriations Clause. Now, this is very similar to the Budget Act. The Budget Act says you can't withhold or defer appropriations. An Anti-Deficiency Act is another form that doesn't so much apply to the president, but it basically prohibits agencies from refusing to spend what Congress has allocated. So if Congress says, spend the money on this, and you're an agency or an official who refuses to do that, you could actually be in violation of law number 2, the Anti-Deficiency Act and Appropriations Clause. Now, this will, given that Elon Musk is now a government employee who's unemployed, could potentially put him into the place of being subject to this law number 2, some people say. Now, then there's also potentially violating the law of agencies. For example, if you simply say, hey, we're just going to defund the Department of Education through DOGE, well, you can't do that. And the Department of Education was established by a statute, and it must be closed via a statute in order to be closed. Now, I'm not here to shill for the government and say this is exactly what should or shouldn't happen. I'm just breaking down what people are saying about the situation because it's crazy out there, okay? Like, if you like this sort of breakdown and summary, just remember, no pitch in this video at all. Just consider subscribing to the channel. So, something to know about the Department of Education is Ronald Reagan actually tried to get rid of the Department of Education in 1980, and he also failed. He tried getting rid of it, he tried defunding it, but because of some of the laws that exist, some of those that we're talking about here, he failed. And a lot of folks think that Donald Trump is circling to do the same thing, but may end up in the same realm of failure. Another thing to consider is something called the Separation of Powers Clause. This is basically a way of saying, look, Congress controls the purse strings, and you can't impede Congress's job. Instead, you might end up getting court actions and injunctions that could end up limiting the power of DOGE or just shutting it down entirely. It's actually earlier today that I speculated one of the reasons Elon Musk is acting like a strike force and moving so quickly is frankly because I think he realizes he might end up getting shut down. And if he gets shut down, then it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess we were only able to do what we were able to do. Now, there's also another clause called the Appointments Clause and an unaccountable power issue. See, Musk is not a Senate-confirmed official. He, was supposed to work outside of the federal government. Now he's a special government employee, but he's acting like somebody who would ordinarily go through a Senate confirmation. I know a lot of people don't like the WAPO, but it's kind of interesting because if you jump on over to see what WAPO says. This is the Jeff Stein story. I actually really respect the Jeff Stein guy. I don't know these other writers, but Jeff Stein, he's a good person and generally provides interesting info. But if you look at this story is U.S. government officials privately warn Musk's blitz appears illegal. Now, they don't actually detail all of these laws that we're talking about, but they do reference that. Scott Bessent of the Treasury Department says, don't worry, DOGE is only going to have read-only access. However, people are very concerned that a lot of the DOGE individuals are using private email addresses or they're not disclosing who they are on calls. Now, there are arguments like lawyers for Elon and DOGE that say, well, we don't want to dox people because we've already seen that, and then these DOGE employees get threatened, and that's bad. But on the flip side, using a private email server, you got some people going, bro, this sounds a whole lot like Hillary Clinton, except it's on steroids, where, people are mad about her using a private email server. All right, whatever. So these are all just the arguments that we're hearing. The big picture constitutional worry is that there is some kind of shadow executive branch existing and operating and exercising power outside the channels of the Constitution and the statutes that Congress has authorized, says Blake Emerson, a professor of constitutional law at UCLA School of Law. Hey, I actually went to UCLA. I've only listed a few of these so far, okay? There's another one. There's FACA. This has actually hit Trump up before against veterans in 2018. But FACA, whatever you want to call it, Federal Advisory Committee Act, this has everything to do with as soon as you're an advisor, you have to have transparency, board meetings, there are oversight risks, you have to put reports together, you might have to testify in front of Congress, you could get your functions limited, working in secret could violate the FACA, whatever act you want to call it. Now, why does that matter? Because again, we don't think the Justice Department is going to sue because the Justice Department is going to be directed by Trump, at least for the time being, but you could certainly get injunctions from courts. But what you also have to pay attention to is that individual cities or people who get fired or unions, federal worker unions or whatever, they can all file class action lawsuits against Elon as a person. So that's because as technically a non-paid employee / non-employee, it's unclear if the government protections for employees that protect them from lawsuits would be strong enough to protect Elon, and if he even qualifies as an unpaid person for that sort of immunity from being sued. If he's not, then a lot of people think he could be sued straight up by civilians or employees who are terminated. See, there's actually this interesting thing that I didn't know existed, but apparently if you want to lay off a bunch of people in the government, you actually have to go through what's called a workforce reshaping operations handbook. I kid you not, this is just how bureaucracy works, okay? Again, I'm not here shilling for the government, just here to share perspectives and insights, and I thought this was crazy. So you want to lay off some people? You can't just fire them. You have to follow the rules in this 117-page handbook on how to lay people off, deciding whether to implement a reduction in force, the purpose of the reshaping, the timing, are agency personnel records current and available? Do you have the budget available? All promotions, only promotions. Blah. This has to do with like freezes and reimbursements, separate temporary employees, voluntary reduction of hours. An agency may consider a policy that allows employees to voluntarily reduce their scheduled work hours. And I think that's why they're doing this. Voluntary early retirement allows for permanent employees to retire early if their organizations are undergoing a reduction in workforce. But I mean, some people argue that in this, you actually have to give reasons for the reduction in workforce or beyond just like, we want to save money. People have to go through some form of federal due process. So is somebody going to get furloughed? Are they getting demoted? Is there a lack of work? Could you argue that there's a shortage of funds? It's hard to argue that if Congress has already provided the funds, right? So there's a long booklet here. the point of this, again, isn't to say, like, oh, yeah, DOGE isn't following this. I don't know. The point of this is simply to say, when there's a 119-page handbook, you could pretty much guarantee that somebody is going to file a lawsuit in some kind of federal worker mass, like, class action, arguing that this layoff was unfair and unjust, and that they should have been paid more, or that they should have never been let go, especially if they can't go find another job. See, that's actually a big risk. If you can't find another job, then your damages may actually grow even more, which, again, that creates problems for anybody at the other end of that, Elon in this case. 1974 Privacy Act breaches, it's another one. This is probably a clear-cut one. If somebody isn't cleared with the proper credentials, I mean, maybe they are, but they shouldn't have the access to the banking information of millions of retirees, taxpayers, beneficiaries of government payments, social security payments, whatever. There are confidentiality risks, there are cybersecurity risks, there are HIPAA risks, there are a lot of risks here. You could also have, a potential that, again, not only other states or local governments sue, but also schools or departments or companies that were expecting payment through a contract with the government, and all of a sudden that contract got canned because, Elon's like, yeah, no, we're just not going to pay this anymore. But they basically built their supply chain for that or whatever it is. Who knows? I think there's going to be an insane amount of lawsuits here. And again, not chilling for the gov, but the question now is, could there potentially be so many or a set of laws that are so heavily broken that Elon Musk could go to jail? Well, a lot of people think the answer to that is no, but there are some people who think the answer to that is yes. Now, my guess is if that were to ever happen, I think Elon spent enough money to get the glorious pardon from Donald Trump. So do I actually think that Elon Musk would end up in jail? No, of course not. But do I think that the days of DOGE could become numbered because of court actions and injunctions and questions about constitutionality? Absolutely. And that, I think, is exactly why Elon Musk, because he knows this. I don't think he's stupid. Some people say he's, like AOC says he is. I think he knows this, and that's exactly why he's got people sleeping on the floors in the sort of DOGE office, because he knows tick-tock, the clock is ticking. So this is wild. But if you want to see more on this, I really encourage you to check out that WAPO piece over here. You might not like WAPO. That's okay. But there are plenty of other articles or news organizations that are covering this. But this illegality push, I mean, this was just posted a little bit ago here along with the CIA announcement. But look at this one. Here's another one. Elon Musk is a special government employee. What does that mean? Okay, special government employee. This looks like it was just posted. A special government employee is anyone who works or is expected to work for the government for 130 days or less in a 365 period with or without compensation. It's not clear how long he's going to work, if he'll pass that 130. This means Musk is not a volunteer, but is considered less than full-time. It also means he is exempt from some of the rules, including around financial disclosures and conflicts of interest rules that apply to full-time workers. Democratic lawmakers have expressed concerns about Musk. Well, of course they have, and so are people getting their budgets cut. Elon Musk is a once-in-a-generation business leader. This is the press secretary who said it. You know how old that press secretary is? She's 27. I was blown away when I saw that. I'm like, what? She's 27? My gosh. She speaks well for 27. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen her by now, but here are just pictures of her in case you needed a reminder of who she is or what she looks like. But I didn't know she was just 27. She's got a kid too. But anyway, I mean, not that that makes any difference. I got kids too. So, what rules do special government employees have to follow? SGEs are subject to most rules, although in a less restrictive way. For example, we've got SGEs, let's see, for example, paid at or above, not required to file public disclosure rules. This is especially relevant because of conflicts of interest with Tesla and SpaceX. You know, you now hear that some countries are trying to cancel SpaceX contracts because of Musk's involvement with with Donald Trump. I guess it's not necessarily in this example a country, it's Ontario, which is the provincial government of one of the provinces of Canada, the most populous province, terminating contract with Starlink to deliver high-speed internet to remote parts of Ontario as retribution for the threat of tariffs. Well, I mean, the tariff thing mostly got solved now, but honestly, I think that kind of sucks for them because Starlink's pretty good. But I know there's a lot of frustration in Canada. I get that. Canadians do not want to be Americans. Okay, so as far as I'm aware, I mean, maybe there are some Canadians out there who disagree and they want to be American. But anyway, some people say he's playing with fire. White House didn't immediately respond. Blah, blah, blah. Disclosure, speculation. Yeah, subject to controversy before, arguing they can blur the lines between private and public sectors to help them circumvent the rules. So you have to be careful. Anytime you blur the rules like that, you become subject to the sometimes the worst of both. Like you think it's the best of both, but it often can be the worst of both because now you have the potential government liability, but then you also have the potential civil liability without the government protection. Now, I would find that very interesting. Let's see if we can find some research on that. Would a special government employee be protected from lawsuits like a normal government employee? I'm gonna guess it just sort of depends. Some. Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's what people claim here. At least that's what I'm seeing right here. So only some might apply. So SGEs may not be covered from tort claims or fraud claims, disclosure claims. They could get sued for their official duties, but if they don't actually have official duties and they're just walking around as a private employee, if you will, then they might actually be able to get sued. So generally, regular employees are immune, like we talked about earlier. However, SGEs may not be, especially if you end up violating some of the conflict of interest rules that usually apply. That's interesting. Yeah. So this is crazy. I mean, it's very entertaining, I'll tell you. I'll keep you updated with this news. So if you find it interesting, keep subscribing. But look at this. DOGE, take a look here. DOGE, 12 consulting contract terminations in GSA and Department of Education. Total savings of $30 million, including $23 million work order for digital modernization, program management, office support, 12 underutilized lease cancellations, annual savings of $3 million. So, like, all of those consulting contracts, they're all probably going to sue. 30 million here, 30 million there, soon 1 trillion savings. Honestly, also true. Good point. Let's like that. What does this even mean? Digital modernization, program management. That's a lot of money to pay for a PowerPoint on how to use a PowerPoint. A bunch of salty workers. Yeah, salty government workers. I mean, yeah, it's entirely possible. I'll keep you updated with this. So anyway, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Goodbye.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.